Okay, welcome to Translating Our Observations. I'm going to use a sketch of Iggy Pop just to demonstrate my process of how I interpret a subject. Sorry for the color if it looks a little weird. Something happened when I imported all the clips into iMovie. I tried to correct it the best I could, but it still looks a little weird. I'll post the final image to my website later if you want to take a look at that and see the colors. Alright, so I'm just starting out with a sketch. He has a long face, so we want to show that. Just stretches from between the eyes and hangs about double the height of his cranium. So we're going to go ahead and sketch that out. I think I end up editing this nose later, make it a little bit longer and lower on the face or something. Yeah, right now I'm just putting down different ideas. Just want to get his basic shape of his head, just so that way I don't get too far into exaggerating all those little details, because he does have a lot of interesting stuff going on with his face, like around his cheek and the way that those muscles wrap around from his nose and kind of create like a oval or circle shape that goes from his nose down to his chin and then back up around, just kind of circling his mouth. That's pretty predominant. So just drawing in the block of his face first, so you don't get too caught up in those kind of details too early, because then we could just lose the overall shape and we're not going to get the likeness that we're trying to get. And especially with this kind of stuff, because I'm going to take it into a full digital painting when I'm finished. So with that in mind, usually I do my digital paintings pretty sculptural as far as the style that I color them in. So if I exaggerate stuff and kind of lose that basic framework, it's going to look kind of weird, and I'm just going to be struggling to get a likeness the whole time, instead of just kind of focusing on something a little bit more solid. And when I'm exaggerating shapes, I'm making sure that they still flow within the design and structure of his head. So I went ahead and I narrowed his face all the way in, and I stretched that that part of the mouth that I was talking about stretching, like from the center of the eyes all the way down to the chin. That whole part is just stretched long, and the other stuff I kind of kept the same. And then he's got his jawbone. It sits kind of up high. His jawbone, it's right there close to the edge of his cranium. So I might hide that later on, but just to get kind of how his skull is looking, because his hair does cover that, so it'll probably get covered later. Just kind of mapping out where that mouth is going to fall and how he's got that. He's just pushing his whole mouth to the side to hold his tongue out. If you notice where his chin is at, he's not really shifting his jaw at all. It's just that the skin and muscle and flesh that hangs out over the outside of his mouth that's being pulled to the side by his tongue. So that's one thing to look out for, is just seeing the structure underneath of what the bones are doing, and then noticing how the muscle stretches over the top of it. Alright, so I'm just drawing out his stringy hair, putting his eyes in the middle. The whole sketch that I do is in real time, so I could talk a lot faster than I could draw. So I'll try to explain what I'm doing with all these little lines here. If you notice, underneath his tongue, he has that, I don't know what it's called, that string that connects the bottom of your tongue to the bottom of your mouth. It's kind of folding over because it's hanging up on his teeth. So I drew that in there. Just looking for little things like that. Because We already have the basic structure of his head down, so we'll be fine if we just leave that. I'm drawing in a hand now just to make it have a little something more than just his face. I think ultimately I changed the pose of this hand after. I just made it a fist right now, but I think I end up changing it when I go over the sketch one more time. So what I like to do is I'll do like a real rough sketch first. If you notice, the lines are just real wiggly and whatever. I'm just trying to put everything in the right place. Not too worried about line quality. First of all, because I'm going to paint over it, but second, because I'm also going to draw over this one more time just to put the just refine what the shapes actually look like. So right now I'm just trying to get a likeness based off of where they're placed. So if you could get a likeness based off of where the shapes are placed and their general shape, then when you go in and refine those shapes and make them actually look like the features he has on his face, that because they're in the right spot, it's going to make the drawing that much better. So if you were doing this traditionally, you'd probably want to do these lines pretty lightly. Either that or you could trace over it after with a separate sheet of paper or tracing paper, or maybe erase it to kind of knock back these lines. Because it's digital, I'm just gonna sketch it all out like this, and then I'll just put a new layer on top, and I'll lighten this layer, and that'll make it easier for me to see what I'm doing and see what the new lines are. And then after that, I could just delete out that first original sketch layer, and then just paint on top of the new sketch layer when I start rendering it. Yeah, the layers are a helpful tool, but you don't want to get into the trap of creating too many layers, because then you kind of lose where you are and you have to keep jumping back and forth, and you kind of lose the flow of what you're doing, especially if you come from drawing traditionally for a while and jump into digital. It could be exciting to have all those tools, the layers, and you could zoom in and all that. If you notice, I did the whole sketch pretty much just all at one zoom level, all on one layer. Just that's pretty much how I worked it. Like if I was working traditionally, I just drew the lines darker so I could see, and then I just knocked it back. So now I'm going to zoom in to kind of like get those shapes down, and then I'll be zooming in and out, back and forth, just kind of check on things, make sure I'm doing it right. But because everything is in the right spot, now I could kind of zoom in and see what I'm working on. So kind of decrease the size of my brush there to get a finer line, and I'm just kind of outlining where I'm going to put those shapes. So I'm not tracing back exactly where I put those lines before. I'm still trying to think of the form of the eye and seeing how it's round when I'm drawing this. So he's got really a lot of overlapping shapes there in the eyelid. So I'm just kind of showing those different shapes. If you notice, there's a little line in the corner of the eye that juts out. That's to remind me that there's a ledge. That bottom eyelid is like a little ledge, and we're going to light the top of that ledge, and then the side part of it, we're going to leave that dark when we start adding in the color. So I'm just using lines that are going to give me good notes when I go in and paint it later. I'm not too worried about the line quality. I am using it to kind of suggest what the shadow shapes look like, but I'm not too worried about making the cleanest lines right now. Just trying to put everything in the right spot, because when we paint over it, all those lines are going to disappear. So it makes no sense for me to try to preserve any kind of style. I'm just trying to make it accurate. And I'm blocking in little areas just by pressing real light, getting that lighter tone. I'm not switching out any brush or color. I'm just doing everything with the round brush. And in my brush tool panel, I set opacity and transfer are both set to pen pressure, uh, just so that way I could use it to cross hatch or whatever just by pressing lighter. That way I can just fill in little areas of shadow. And I pretty much keep it like that for the entirety of the painting. I do switch to a brush that I use for hair, but it's basically the brush tip shape is just dots that I have repeating. So instead of doing one line, just does like, I don't know, 6 or 7 lines. This gives me a, I don't have to draw as many lines when I draw the hair. I can just do it all in one stroke and I get like 6 or 7 lines. And they're all kind of varied. So I like to do that. Give me a little bit of variety. So you can kind of separate the texture of the hair from the face. But for the most part, I just paint everything else. I'll paint the tongue, I'll paint the mouth, everything all with the same brush. Just focusing on how the light hits stuff. So I'm just kind of mapping out the shape of that nose. It's got like kind of a it's a rounded bulbous kind of nose, but it's real blocky and angular in the shapes. So you notice just the corners of it are rounding out. It's got yeah, it's got little angles to it. So look for those angles. It's more like drawing a stop sign instead of a circle. So you just look for those little angles. And if you notice in the lips, I'm just looking for what's a concave and what's a convex line. If you know what that means, the concave line is a line that bends in towards the shape, and convex is a line that bends out towards the shape. So if you look on the edge of the lip, you have one line that's going kind of underhand, and then the other line is going overhand. So those are little things that I look for, and that'll show that it's one shape overlapping another shape. At least for when I'm drawing the mouth, just kind of drawing that negative space of what the mouth is. Yeah, these are all little tiny um, like details that would happen in someone else's face, but in his face they're so pronounced. You just have to look around and see what they're doing. So that uh, right underneath the eye, it's kind of like tracing the orbit of the eye. That line that goes in, and then the other line that goes over the top is muscle. So um, the way that it connects usually with the muscles shape, it's kind of a rounder, softer line, and then where it's bone, it's a little bit of a harder line, like an angle or something. So you try to show that um, where the bone has muscle hanging off of it would be like a little bit of a, I don't know, just like an angle, like two straight lines meeting and turning. But then the other one kind of has a swoop into it because that's muscle meeting muscle. So unless they're overlapping and there's the crease in there, then you could have them overlapping. But usually you kind of round that stuff out because the skin is draped over the top of the muscle, so it kind of creates a little bridge. Okay. Yeah, so that's why if you see on the line how I kind of do that S curve thing, that's when I do for muscle meeting muscle. Um, that reminds me to do like a kind of a softer transition there when I put it into color. I start rendering that stuff out, adding values and stuff. I'll do a softer transition there versus where I have two lines meet each other harshly. Then I'll do a little bit harder transition. I won't really blend out that edge if I want a hard line. Just kind of, I colored over the lips just to remind me that it's a different local value. For him, his lips are actually a little bit lighter than his skin. I don't know if you could tell from the video, but I didn't want to color in his whole face just to show that his lips are a different color than his face. So I just did that as a note to myself. I made the lips that local value. Well, I mean, his bottom lip is lighter than his face, but his top lip is darker. But I just did the whole lips that same local value. It's not really getting into the values and which ones are different. I'm just trying to put a difference between what shapes are what shapes, just so I don't get confused and see a bunch of lines there and start putting stuff out of order. Because what we're doing in the sketch phase is really taking good notes that are going to help us for the rest of the drawing. That's why I'm putting in little crosshatches wherever I think I need a little bit more information. I'll put that stuff in just to remind me what's going to have a different. Okay. And then this eye, same as the other eye, just going in the other direction. Notice in my sketch, I kind of stretched that eye up higher than the other eye. You could see because his eyebrow's going up, it's actually lifts his eyelid up a little higher on that side as well. And you'll see that that whole eye is like more of like a stretched oval instead of how the other eye is like a circle. Yeah, you have to take certain liberties. Realistically, the eyeball itself is just going to stay the same shape and your eyelid is going to move around it. Because we're exaggerating it, I kind of gave his eyeball a circular shape. And you'll see in the pupil as well, I kind of stretch it up also. I think eventually I adjust the angle of those pupils because they're not exactly the way I drew them right now. And, yeah, of course the eyelid is stretched way up like I was talking about. And that little fold underneath the eyelid is different on that side than it was on the other side. Sketching, cross-hatching. I'm doing the voiceover after the drawing. I was trying to talk and draw at the same time, but it was a problem for me, so kind of narrating after I do things because I don't remember exactly what order I did everything in. I have a tendency when I'm working to kind of jump around back and forth, and what that does for me is it'll refresh my eye. If I'm looking in the same spot for too long, I can just really render out one eye, and then I pull back and realize it's in the wrong spot, or realize it doesn't match the same style of everything else, and then I gotta either change the style of everything else or paint that eye again. And I don't like to do that. I just like to keep jumping around and keep with the flow of it. It refreshes your eye, and you get to keep looking back at your shapes and kind of see what's wrong. See what's wrong with each one of the features there instead of just committing and spending too long on the wrong idea. So now that I zoomed out, I get a better look at how the whole thing is working. And right now it kind of looks like I wanted his face to be skinny, but if you look, the shape of his hair has a little bit more volume to it, and I think I adjusted at this stage right now. I give it after I draw on the body. I think I bow out the sides of the hair a little bit more. Just kind of tracing over the little loose sketch I did. I kept the body pretty loose because it wasn't really the focus of it. I didn't really pull a reference for it. I think for this sketch, I was just had the intention of kind of showing you how I observe stuff. If I went in and rendered out the whole body, it would make this video twice as long. So it's body pretty loose, just off of, you know, memory from when I was doing a Google image search trying to find a good one of his face. Sometimes I'll get multiple images of the face and just try to understand how parts of his face move around. But for him, because he's so thin and he's got, you know, all those little creases and stuff in his face, you can really see how the anatomy is working. You don't have to get really multiple images. You can just tell from the one how everything's working. Start to draw out the hand, and then I realize that I should probably do something different with it. See, I'm changing up the hand like I was talking about. And the way I draw hands or fingers or anything is I just think of it as like a three-dimensional shape. First I kind of get like a silhouette of the hand, like what I would think the hand silhouette's going to look like, kind of like a box. And then from there I'll just like extrude pieces out from it, just kind of make a more dimensional thing going on. Yeah, it looks like he's got 6 fingers right now, but that's going to get fixed in a minute. Just sketching around, finding the bicep, trying to figure out where his body is from underneath that. Yeah, it's good to kind of, if you get a chance, study some anatomy. I'm not, I don't know, I can't tell you the names of all the muscles and bones and all that stuff, but I know enough to help me in my design. I won't always put stuff in the right places, but I know it enough that it doesn't look like an alien. Well, he kind of looks like an alien, but that's just Iggy Pop, man. There's no one like Iggy Pop. Okay, just gonna get some wrinkles and creases in his forehead. I think I kind of play those wrinkles and creases down later on in the drawing. Fix the shape of the head already. Just kind of setting those eyes a little deeper, pushing them back a little bit. Just remind, that's all. Just this sketch stage is all just to give you clues when you go in and painting it, because you'll be thinking about things like value and color and all that stuff. So you don't want to have to be thinking about what you need to exaggerate and what you need to, push forward and pull back and all that stuff. You really want to lock in as much as you can at this stage. Or otherwise, why would you do a sketch, So just kind of take your time with this. I spent about 35 minutes on the sketch, and then when I start painting it and all that, probably spend another hour on color, and then I'll go in and refine some details for about 30 minutes. After I kind of put the basic colors down, I like to take a little break, maybe 10 minutes or whatever, get up, stretch, and then come back to it and kind of see if you missed anything. So you see me do that in this video here. After I set in the colors, I'll kind of go back in and start moving stuff around, just because I'll have a fresh set of eyes on it. Okay. And I like to start with, I don't know, I like to start with a color when I'm doing the sketch that's kind of a base to what their face is, but I just make it way darker. Look, see how I made his hair more of like a diamond shape. The overall silhouette of his hair, I made it like a diamond shape, so it kind of it bows out like around where the ears are and then cuts back in. Anyways, like I was saying, yeah, the if you look at his skin, I don't know if you could tell from the video or not, but it has a lot of red in it. So that's why I use red to do my little under sketch, because when I paint over it, I want that red to be kind of like the shadow and dark parts that are popping through. So it's really just gonna help me when I'm sketching, when I'm trying to pick out colors, because if I put those colors up against green, they're just gonna look like it's way too red. Um, Not so much in the final, because they'll eventually all get painted over, or at least for the most part they'll get painted over. But when I'm just starting to pick out my colors, um, I just want something that's not going to throw me too far off. That's not going to make my color choice look like it's wrong when it's right, or vice versa, look like it's right when it's wrong, which is probably worse. And then I'll just start. All right, as you can see, I just kind of blocked in all the colors, or all the color in the back there, and just kind of giving it like a light um, tone, just kind of going over the sketch that I already did, putting down a good little base for me to paint on top of. It shouldn't be anything too complicated. It's real loose right now. I'm just painting underneath the painting that I already did, or the drawing I already did, and just going over where I think the shadows are gonna fall, and yeah, just kind of putting down a base color. That's it. Filling it in. I'm marking right there on the trap. I think it's going to be darker than where the light hits the collarbone. It doesn't have to be 100% accurate, because we're going to paint better colors on top of it. You could already tell, like, the chest is probably going to be a little bit darker than that, or underneath the nose is going to be darker and stuff like that, but just kind of little indications here and there. If you wanted, you could just put all one flat color underneath here, but I like to put, especially where I know there's going to be dark shadows, I like to put a little bit darker color, because then when I put the color on top of it, it's not going to look so foreign and alien. Because if you put a really dark color on top of a light background, it's going to look even darker. And vice versa, if you put a really dark color on top of a light background, oh no, I put a really light color on top of a dark background, it's just gonna look way too light. So just kind of indicating where uh, where the values are lighter and where they're darker. Yeah, you could go in and fully render this this monochrome painting out, but I usually don't. I usually get it so it looks somewhat dimensional, and then from there I'll just put paint on top of it. Probably got about 5 more minutes here of just kind of adding some little highlights here and there. Went over the plane of the cheek, um, underneath the eyes themselves are going to be lighter, just because it's a lighter local value than the skin, obviously because it's white versus whatever color orange his face is. And just kind of top plane of the tongue where whatever plaque is sitting on there, whatever he's got. It's more texture on it. If there's a surface with a lot of texture, it's gonna grab a lot more of the light. There's more little facets for light to bounce off of, especially if it's wet. So the top of his tongue is gonna be a lot lighter than the sides of his tongue. Whereas you might see like in the cheek or something, it's not as much of a difference. Okay. And I when I'm painting, I like to color sample from my own image and just to pick up those darks and versus the lights and just kind of keep picking back and forth. You could do it like that, or you could block in all the shadow with one color and then block in all the light areas with another color. I mean, however you want to do it. I like to color pick just so I could push stuff back and forth, and I'm still kind of sketching at this stage instead of just rendering out what's already been drawn. That's why I like to go back and forth, especially with caricatures. If it was a portrait, I'd probably just map out where all my shadows are going to be, map out where all my light's going to be, and then just fill in the blanks. But with a caricature, I like to kind of push stuff back and forth, just to see what gives me the better feel. Okay. Hopefully, you guys are more entertained by me drawing than I am. It's kind of hard to watch myself draw and talk. Mm. Okay, just a couple more minutes of this rendering in the tone. I think this is where I fill the background with that color. Yeah, I fill the whole background with the red. Just kind of go around, just real rough. That's kind of how I work through the entire painting. I just kind of stay loose with it. I don't really go in and I don't know. Not really one part of the painting I'm like, okay, this has to be perfect. I just kind of keep it rough and loose and just keep working. Just keep sculpting it, chipping away. You'll even notice in my background, I like to kind of paint it by hand instead of just selecting it out and filling it all with one color. There we go. Looks pretty good. I increased the brush size just so I could kind of fill in those gaps, but I don't want to fill them in too much because then it's going to kind of take the life out of it. Yeah, that's one reason why I like hand painting the background. I don't want to take the life out of it. Right now, I'm just going to flatten this whole image down and just paint right on top of it. Do it already. Flatten it. There we go. And there we go. Now I can just start picking out colors and painting on top. This part's going to be sped up because it's going to be pretty boring for me to just talk about color the whole time. It takes me about a minute to pick each color. Once I start looking at it, I just want to make sure that I'm thinking about not only what colors I'm picking out of the picture, but also how they relate to each other and how I could vary them. I usually don't vary them too much unless I'm doing something a little bit more experimental. If it's just a straight caricature where I'm just drawing from one reference and just copying it out, I'll just get it pretty close to the picture. Um, but I don't color sample from the image because a lot of the stuff that I'm painting is all changed from the image. It's not like a distorted picture, so the light's hitting it differently than how it is in the image. So where you might think it's darker underneath the eye, um, on the reference photo in your actual painting, it might not be as dark because maybe one crease isn't as deep as how it is in the reference, or vice versa. Maybe it's even deeper. Like with this one, I really exaggerated those creases in his face, so there's going to be a lot. They're going to be a lot deeper, and they're going to have more occlusion shadows, so you're not really going to get too much light in there. They're just going to be a lot darker. The tongue is going to be pretty much the same as how it is over there. I'm still not going to color sample just because I haven't for the rest, so if my colors were a little bit inaccurate and then I have the tongue just right on dead accurate to the reference photo, then it's just not all going to match. So yeah, just like to do everything basic, like if I was doing this as a traditional painting, but I have the benefit of not having to clean up a mess afterwards, and I have the benefit of if I make a mistake, I can just paint right over it in a couple of strokes. But all the thinking is all the same. So the same as when I was sketching it, I just kind of keep jumping back all around. Once I have all the colors in on the face, then I could just color sample from my own image, and I could just pick, similar planes and flush them out in the same dimensionality as how it is on the other side. And gotta be careful. Looks like I kind of changed the shape of his hair a little bit. See, I bring back the hairbrush. See, look at that. Easy, easy. Well, it looks easy when it's sped up 4 times as fast. Yeah, let's go back to that round brush and paint everything else out. Just did that to give me a quick little base. See how that red is working to look like it's shadows? So that way I'm just kind of painting around. And it doesn't look too alien once I put those strokes down because it's the right tone and it's the right color range, even though it's not exactly the right amount of saturation or the right hue. It's pretty close to that hue and saturation, or at least to the hue. Yeah, see how I brought the pupil in a little tighter on the other eye, the further away eye, just to make it look a little bit more focused. It's pretty subtle compared to how I had it in the sketch, but it is different. Just painting away. And these colors look kind of weird, like I was saying before. The video editing software I used, the images got messed up when I imported the video. So, and then I had erased the originals because I didn't notice it was messed up until after I'd exported it. I'm just kind of working out those details underneath the eyes. It is a different color. It's a little bit. It looks like it's green, but it's really red. That's just been desaturated, but because it's sitting against the the overall redness of his face, it just looks green. Yeah, so that's stuff you have to definitely look at when you're doing these kind of paintings. Is the colors sometimes trick you. You want to stay within that same range. I just keep going back to that because that's how I figure out my color. Like I'll just kind of pick a range and stay in it. Some stuff has a wider spectrum of different hues and stuff, but for the most part, all the work kind of stays in that same. Okay, so I'm just painting over. Okay, these are all the finishing little details and stuff. You probably noticed the colors gotten a lot better because I had broken this into a separate piece so I could speed it up a little bit faster. And for some reason this one didn't get too affected with that, whatever had happened with the color. It still is affected a little bit, but not as drastically. See, so I'm just going in and reshaping some stuff. See, I fixed the hair that I'd messed up earlier. And I just keep color sampling from my own image because, like I was saying before, if you pull it from the reference photo, it's gonna look weird. And I used a little bit of the background color and painted over the top of his body to kind of push it back a little bit so it doesn't pop out as much. So that way your focus goes to the face. Usually I would render that out a little bit better, use some sharper transitions there, and I think I do a little bit of sharpening here when I add in the veins, but he's kind of skinny, veiny guy, so adding all that stuff. I did a little bit of sharpening, not really. I just kind of did a line and a little cross hatching underneath, but it gets the job done. You don't want to make it look too different from how the face looks. Sometimes when I do that little quick paint over like I did, it just looks muddy and foggy because it's all a soft brush that I just went over it with. So just adding in highlight there, make it look a little bit more dimensional on the hand. I'm not going to detail that out too much. And I think that's it. Go ahead and take a look at the final there. And if you guys have any questions, just put them in the comments below. And stay tuned for my next video and look out on the website if you want to see another picture of this with a little bit um, better quality, more color. If you want to see some of the other work I've done in the past, you can check it out on tylerfontes.com. I'll provide a link in the description or on my channel. And subscribe, and hopefully I'll put some more videos out